So, do you find when you go around to Connecticut and you're talking to people that they confirm what Quinnipiac has found?
They do. What's really fascinating is that when you have empirical data like that, sometimes I'll present it to folks. Most of the time you don't, because obviously you're having a conversation, so you're not looking to come across like, Mr. Quiz Game. But when you sit with folks at a Democratic Town Committee or you talk with folks at the gate of a county fair, and when you visit with folks, they tell you what they're thinking. In other words, it's not like you have to tell them, hey, he's not electable. They'll tell you straight out. You'll have somebody who's been on a Democratic Town Committee for decades and that historically supported him. I'll give you a good example of over the weekend in Rockville and in Vernon and these areas, and visiting with folks who historically supported Senator Dodd. And then they'll tell you, I don't support him anymore. And you'll say, why is that? And they'll say, he's been there way too long. He can't understand the struggle of me and my neighbors and the people that I work with. And he just is all wrapped up in scandal. And so what they're telling you is exactly what the empirical data is telling you, which makes sense, right? I mean,
right.
The empirical data is obviously being collected from the citizens of the state.
And to the best of my knowledge, Quinnipiac has him losing to, I believe, every single Republican challenger.
Yeah, I mean, the line I had on Face the State the other day with Dennis House on CBS, I said, look, all they have to do is run a warm body, and he
right.
loses. And I really wasn't joking. I mean, look, it's as someone said to me the other day, it's A, B, C, D. I said, what does that mean? Anybody but Chris Dodd.
Mm-hmm.
If the reason that you have a half dozen Republicans who've just poured into this race is because they all know if he's the nominee, they win.
Right.
Right? And there's no secret. Obviously, the nightmare scenario for the Republicans is that Merrick Alpert is a Democratic nominee, because now you can't run that negative campaign that you're going to run against him, right? Mm-hmm. Now you have a guy, generationally a different candidate. You have a guy with a completely different look. You have a guy who's a completely different age. You have a guy who is married to a Hispanic immigrant who's got 3 little kids. You have a guy who grew up poor in a single-parent home. You have a guy who went away and served and was decorated for his actions in the U.S. military. You have a guy who successfully put together a couple of companies and grew those companies and created hundreds of jobs in the country. You obviously have someone who is completely different. He's not bathed in all of the culture of corruption. That's a bad scenario for the Republicans.
And we should mention that you come with extra expertise, as I believe your wife is a PhD in public policy.
She is, as we said growing up in Colchester, my wife is a wicked smart. So live with it. Yeah, she's here in the PhD program at UConn, and she loves it. I'm really glad, because she has the view of UConn that I do. I mean, she heard me kind of recite the mantra for all these years since I first met her about how UConn's the greatest place in the world, and I love it, and it changed my life, and blah, blah, blah. And now she thinks the same way about UConn. It's great.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, I do.
So when did you decide that you wanted to run?
I think it was building for some time, watching the economic problems, and then watching someone in Senator Dodd who I had traditionally voted for, I had supported, I had politically contributed to, watching him just fumble and fail when it came to the banking crisis, and then not be truthful about it. That was it. And then there was a very specific day, where I started out that morning at the house in Mystic, and I went to Hartford to the barber who's cut my hair for about 25 years. And I talked with him about the struggles of his small business and of his customers. And he just said, we're forgotten. These folks in Washington are not even connected with us. And then I swung by my mom's home in Colchester, the home where I grew up, the home where I first packed the bags and went from there to UConn. And this has been my home my whole life. And my mom was there. My mom was older. She struggles to get around a little bit. And she was sitting in the kitchen at that old wooden table, and she had in her hand her retirement account. And I came in, and she was sitting there looking down at it, and she looked out, and she had it in her hand, and she just said, Merrick, half of everything I've ever worked for is gone. And I think more than any one line that did it, because my mom was the one who, God, she took those loans out so I go to UConn. I mean, she worked 2 jobs. She did everything. She is as salt of the earth and as real as any human being gets. And when you look in the eyes of somebody who's just a solid human being who's always struggled for you, and they tell you how they've been betrayed by the government, there's no way not to be impacted by that. And then I drove home, and that night Alex and I live in Mystic with our 3 little kids. At the time we had 2, and we do what everybody does. We tuck our kids in bed, we read to them, we tell the truth, take responsibility for your action, just what everybody does. And then we went into our bedroom, we turned the TV on, turned the news on, and those very personal moments in the life of a couple where it's unfiltered, it's completely unfiltered, and on the TV in our bedroom comes on TV this guy who I had traditionally supported, and it's during the AIG crisis, right, and during the bonus crisis, and he's there lying about being involved in and authorizing $165 million in bonuses for these execs for AIG. And I got out of bed, I looked at her, and I said, I'm not going to take this anymore. This is ridiculous. We all know it's wrong. And we're all sitting here acting like we don't see it. And that was it. And then in the ensuing days, obviously, I figured out, okay, how are you going to do this? It's been great to be the Jimmy Stewart character in the movie, but how are you going to go do this? And, and then however many weeks later, I commenced.
And how have the Democratic Party elite, how have they responded?
Well, it's interesting. What they want you to think, what Senator Dodd wants you to think, and a very small number of folks in Washington and Hartford want you to think, is that it's the Soviet Union up there in the May Day parade, that they're all in sort of lockstep together, and you will not defy the party.
Sure.
We'll get you. But the reality is, when you go out there to the 169 town committees, which is much of what I do every day across Connecticut, strong opposition to him, and that is true town to town to town. And the beautiful thing about democracy, there's not a darn thing they can do to stop that. So every day we get stronger, because every day I get in front of more and more folks and talk about job creation, talk about clean government, talk about getting us out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and tell people unequivocally there's a much better way. You deserve a better senator than you have, and I intend to be the best employee that you've ever had. And that is so wildly different than what he offers, that each day you grow stronger and he grows weaker. And that there's something magical in a democracy about a guy driving around his red pickup truck from town to town doing that.
Sounds great. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's so wild. Here's the problem. The problem is I'll finish, on the western portion of the state at some Democratic town committee at 9 o'clock at night, 8:30 at night. And I'll be so jacked up about this thing that I'll then get in the car, drive back across the state, get in at 11:30, wake my wife up, tell her, oh, this is great, I love this is awesome, it's like something out of Norman Rockwell. And then she'll say, oh, terrific, good for you.
Go to sleep.
Yeah, go to sleep. And so, of course, then I'll lay there, just look at the ceiling for the next hour, because I'm thinking, man, this is fantastic. So, it's, as you can imagine, it creates a very strange sleep cycle.